This is a brand new Boeing 767, and it is sitting on a drag racing strip with its nose collapsed onto the pavement. There are cars parked a few meters away. There are people who had been racing that afternoon, now staring at an airliner that fell out of the sky and stopped in front of them. Nobody on board was seriously hurt. And the reason this aircraft was here, on a racetrack in the middle of Canada, is one of the strangest chains of small mistakes in aviation history. Air Canada Flight 143 left Montreal on the 23rd of July, 1983, heading for Edmonton. The 767 was one of the newest aircraft in the fleet, so new that it measured its fuel in kilograms, while the rest of the country still worked in pounds. On the ground, the crew and the refuelers had to calculate how much fuel to load by hand, because a fuel gauge system on the aircraft was not working. They did the math. But they used the conversion factor for pounds instead of kilograms. The number looked right. It was not. The aircraft took off with less than half the fuel it needed, and no one knew. Everything was normal for 2 hours. Then, at 41,000 feet over Ontario, a warning chimed. A fuel pressure problem on the left side. The crew assumed it was a faulty pump. Moments later, the second warning. Then the left engine went quiet. They turned toward Winnipeg and began to descend, still believing they had one good engine and plenty of fuel. Then the right engine stopped too. And now the cockpit filled with a sound most pilots never hear. Near silence. The main instruments died. In a modern jet, the engines also power the flight displays, so the crew was left with a few battery backups and almost nothing else. Winnipeg was too far. They were 100 tons of glider with no thrust, sinking toward the ground. But the captain, Robert Pearson, had a skill almost no airline pilot has. He flew gliders on the weekend. He knew, instinctively, how to fly an aircraft with no engine, how to trade height for distance and stretch a glide. His first officer, Maurice Quintal, remembered something. He had once been stationed at a former Air Force base nearby, at a place called Gimli. What neither of them knew was that the runway at Gimli had been turned into a racetrack. And that day, it was full of people and cars. They aimed for it anyway. As they got close, the aircraft was too high and too fast. In a powered plane you would go around. They could not. So Pearson used a technique from gliding, a forward slip, crossing the controls to make the aircraft skid sideways through the air and bleed off height fast, something a 767 is never meant to do. It worked. The jet dropped onto the runway. The nose gear, which had not fully locked, collapsed on touchdown, and that scraping nose actually helped drag the aircraft to a stop, just short of the crowd. 61 passengers and 8 crew walked away. There was a small fire near the nose, put out by the racers who had been standing there with extinguishers seconds earlier. The aircraft was repaired and flew for another 25 years. And it was never called by its registration again. Everyone knew it by the name it earned that afternoon. The Gimli Glider.